Welcome back to Cultivated Live from Planet 13 in Las Vegas. It sounds cool to say that. I am Jay Rosenthal, Chris Doramer, Jeremy Burke, and Jason Tarasek.
Hello, Jay.
Jason, you are from Minnesota. Well, you're from Wisconsin, but you live in Minnesota. Sure. You formerly known as the Minnesota Cannabis Law guy. You are now with
You can still call me that.
I can?
Yep.
Minnesota Cannabis Law. It's good for SEO to call yourself that.
I think so.
It is. But you're with Vicente now.
I am.
A leading cannabis law firm throughout the U.S. I've checked in with you hundreds of times about what's happening in Minnesota, but also I've known you for the past two people we've had on a total of like 50 years. But you have known, it might be getting closer to 30. When we were trying to buy weed on Haight Street, did you think we'd be talking about it this far from a dispensary in Las Vegas that looked like this?
Yeah. It's wonderful, though, that it's all come together, come full circle.
It's easier to buy now.
Totally.
We're in a store.
And you don't have to, go into a dark alley anymore.
You know, it would be cool, though, if they just, you walked up to the counter and they're like, Nugs?
Yeah.
Nugs?
Green bud.
Yeah,
Green bud. There'd just be
bud?
These people following you on Haight Street whispering green bud.
But that's how long I've known
Very
you.
ambiguous. I don't
Since
know
we
what
were
they're
doing
talking
that.
about.
But also, as you were thinking about cannabis law in Minnesota, you sort of saw the future. Maybe not the timeline, but the future. Talk about the trajectory of cannabis in Minnesota.
Well, you helped me see the future, Jay. We were all with our families in Chicago, and Canada had just legalized, and you were launching the business of cannabis to get ahead of the market. And I thought, why aren't I doing something like that? I'm going to steal Jay's idea, just copy it, and do something similar in Minnesota.
But with a real skill and talent of law and a legal degree.
Yeah, so I started citizen lobbying in 2018. Pushing for legalization. I became the Marijuana Policy Project lobbyist in 2019. We got a legalization bill, a hearing in April 2019 that lost on a party line vote because the Republicans had controlled the Senate at that time. But it set the stage, I think, for where we are today in Minnesota because unlike a lot of states, Minnesota is not a direct ballot initiative state. We had to go through the legislature, so we needed the electoral politics to line up. And thank goodness they did in November. The DFL, as the Democrats are called in Minnesota, took control of the House, Senate, and the governor's mansion. And so we had the trifecta, and we got her done. Governor Walz signed it in late May, and we're now in the process of setting up our Office of Cannabis Management, and hopefully we'll have dispensaries open early 2025.
Well, there's two things there that I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. One, tell us what DFL stands for, because it's the coolest name for a Democratic Party in all of the country.
I always forget to define it.
Right.
Democrat Farmer Labor Party. As I'm not a native Minnesotan, so I may get some of this wrong, but as I understand it, it was three different political parties that a long time ago realized, hey, we were all sort of Democrats, let's just form together.
So it's the DFL.
Yeah.
And you mentioned as an important factor getting the Office of Cannabis Management set up.
Yeah.
That is not as easy as it should have been, was.
We've had a few hiccups.
For those who even follow this as closely as people who follow it, there was more than just a little hiccup. But
yeah. So we're approaching 6 months now since the governor signed the bill, and as far as I know, the Office of Cannabis Management still has only a handful of employees. We still don't have a permanent director in place. We're hoping a permanent director will be named in February or so. That's the latest rumor. But rulemaking is underway. Again, they named someone to the post. She had been operating a hemp shop, and I think almost immediately, everyone realized that she was selling non-compliant products, and of course, maybe not the ideal candidate to be running a $1.5 billion state industry as your chief regulator. So she gracefully stepped away.
Who figured that out?
It was widely available through a Google search.
Okay. So Google.
And so social media just sort of
Jeremy
went
was
crazy.
trying to plug a journalist somewhere in Minnesota.
Yeah. I was trying to see if my profession was useful, but apparently not.
I think the Googlers were quickly in touch with the reporters, who then wasted no time in sort of,
if I may,
spreading the news.
And I'm not I don't want to. There is a weird. I don't even. Is the word a peccadillo? That is a word that exists.
It's a word.
Great word.
There are legal
I know lots of words.
THC beverages
Yeah.
on shelves throughout Minnesota.
Yeah.
Like normal stores, convenience stores, grocery stores. Talk about what the hell is going on, or how that happened.
So we legalized hemp-derived THC in 2022. Frankly, when I was working on that bill, I expected it to be mostly gummies. So, but of course, cannabis is the law of unintended consequences. So I did not foresee the explosion of THC beverages. Like you say, Jay, they're available absolutely everywhere. You don't need a license to sell them, and that's going to remain true for probably another year. They will be more tightly regulated once our Office of Cannabis Management gets up and running, because that regulatory body will oversee both the hemp-derived THC products and the adult use products. But for now, you can walk into virtually any restaurant mostly in the Twin Cities, I imagine, but you will see, of course, beverage offerings, and then you'll see THC beverage offerings. And so long as they're carding people and they have a on-sale license, you can sell them and people can consume them in public, and you don't need permission from anyone to do that.
Can you give us, or me specifically, the For Dummies reason why this happened? Like, why did this loophole occur?
Yes.
If you can call it a loophole. Yeah.
Or
there
call
was
you
like
a dummy.
a
Take your pick.
real deep dive.
That's a given. Yeah.
It was like a real wonky dive. I'll give you like a basic wonky dive. So I was lobbying for the Minnesota Cannabis Association in 2022, and my job was to try to get CBD in food. Well, of course, everyone knows in this industry you can't put cannabinoids in food. So we had to call them edible cannabinoid products. And then this is during COVID, so we're lobbying and whatnot over Zoom. One legislative staffer said, well, let's just go for THC in edible cannabinoid products. I said, you're nuts. It's never going to fly. The Republicans are still in control of the Senate. He said, no, let's try it. And sure enough, it happened. And Republicans, not only did they approve it, they voted overwhelmingly for it. Granted, this provision was stuck in an 800-page health omnibus bill that passed at midnight of the last day of session, and there was very little attention given to it. So there's been a lot in the Minnesota news about whether the Republicans knew what they were doing, but here we are.
Just a little squeak through.
Does no one read these? Like, is that how politics works? No one reads the stuff?
I will not answer that question.
It's
I
funny
think
because
some
you're saying
people,
that these microphones were like a Senate hearing.
I think
I don't recall.
certain Republican gatekeepers on cannabis definitely knew what they were doing, and the caucus looked to them for a thumbs up and thumbs down. They gave them a thumbs up, and it happened.
Yeah. Can I ask a more, practical or businessy question? Does that, because there are real brands there are real cannabis brands making beverages on shelves in normal stores.
Yes.
Are they?
They are now at Total Wine, which has a THC section. That was big. That lit up social media about a couple weeks ago.
What is the advantage? Are lots of companies pressing that advantage? I guess is my question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly, so because hemp is legal everywhere, you can ship it in from wherever. You just need, at this moment, like I said, you don't need a license, but you do need to register with the state saying we're selling these things.
Okay.
Well, there's no fee for that. And they have a map on the Department of Health website that shows where these products are coming from. It's all across the country. I think it's even Puerto Rico. So, yeah, because, again, hemp is legal everywhere. You have access to interstate commerce, and certainly a lot of Minnesota businesses that are in on it. And frankly, our microbreweries are really in on it because they realize, well, we have all this packing equipment. We can easily make THC beverages with the stuff we make India Pale Ales with.
But it would taste better than an IPA. No offense, IPA. It's so disgusting. It really is. I really can't. It's awful. So there are THC beverages on normal shelves, including Total Wine.
Yep.
There's interstate commerce as it presents to this. Yep. They're serving it in restaurants.
Bars.
And
everywhere.
bars. So the sky must be falling in Minnesota.
No. Well, that's the amazing thing. So we talked about how this may or may not have been accidentally legalized. Well, when we came back for the legislative session, it was interesting that none of the Republicans were necessarily saying we should repeal this.
Is that because of hemp farmers?
Well, it's because they realize their constituents like THC beverages.
You don't say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was money.
And in fact, they really didn't put up much opposition to the whole adult use legalization. I think they saw that this is going to happen. So the focus, even from Republicans, was let's make the bill better. They weren't trying to kill it. Not that they had the votes to kill it anyway, but it was sort of a lukewarm opposition.
Can I ask you another trend question?
Yeah.
Because you're obviously live in Minnesota, but you're from Wisconsin, and Wisconsin is often in the news lately. But so is South Dakota. Like it's going back to the ballot again. Like, what is that trend line moving from like Illinois west and north?
Well, like you said, I'm originally from Milwaukee, went to school in Madison. I just paid a visit to the legislature in Madison to find out what was cooking with their medical marijuana bill. And of course, the Republicans have a stranglehold on that legislature, but I was surprisingly encouraged. It looks like there may be some movement on a medical marijuana bill there. Even Speaker Voss, who has a reputation for being a bit of a hardline conservative, I think he may be open to that. I met with the Senate Majority Leader who said he's got the votes if it can get through the House. So I'm eager to hear perhaps there may be traction there. And the hemp-derived THC stuff, granted, it got a ton of attention in Minnesota, but I mean, Wisconsin has sort of the same thing. So long as you manufacture your products within Wisconsin, so they can't ship in for Puerto Rico like we're doing in Minnesota, but you can sell those products in Wisconsin too, because they have adopted the federal farm bill as their hemp statute. So long as you're not engaging in interstate commerce, you're good.
And what about South Dakota, which has had it seems like a torturous go at this?
It's
and we
been
did
really
some work,
sad.
you do some work there, but we've done some stuff together.
So a few years ago, as my Minnesota clients were getting impatient for legalization in Minnesota, we started taking a peek at South Dakota. And in fact, the voters there approved both adult use and medical on the ballot. Medical is still
It's dispensaries,
yeah. So I represent medical marijuana companies in South Dakota. Relatively small market, but still a market. The adult use aspect of that was shot down in the courts, despite my best effort writing an amicus brief to the South Dakota Supreme Court. It didn't carry the day. So adult use is not legal there. They did try another ballot initiative that failed. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of money to move the needle in the media regime in South Dakota. So there were some moneyed interests who really sought to shoot down that adult use initiative.
And the governor's not in favor of it.
Very much so, yes.
She's
not
tough.
in favor. But they're going to try again. They're going to keep trying again because the voters have approved it before. And I think there's a large segment of that population who'd like to keep trying until they get it.
Yeah. And a good grassroots advocacy effort.
Yeah, Marijuana Policy Project has been super active there. There's now a pretty active sort of medical marijuana business community, that's making money selling medical marijuana products. And, money buys advertising and it helps you do signature drives. So I think it'll happen. We'll see.
Can I ask you about a timeline in Minnesota? Back to Minnesota. Like, when are the dispensaries going to open?
We are told first quarter of 2025. So we have hired a consultant.
Oh, my God. No offense.
I know. We're
Is
told
it that
the rules.
complicated?
Okay.
It's like every state has it.
Rulemaking is going to take like a year. I have volunteered to write the rules in 2 weeks if they'll just let me. They said no, thank you.
ChatGPT could do it.
You could copy and paste another state's rules, I think, and I know it's not that easy. But honestly, we're state number 23. It's not that hard. Let's just do it, right? Okay, I know it's not that easy either, but we've got a lot of agencies involved. We just don't have a lot of institutional knowledge about cannabis necessarily, so there's a learning curve within our agencies. Again, they hired this policy consultant that I think is educating them, but it's a long slog, Jay.
Yeah.
Why reinvent the wheel every time, though?
Well,
Ask New York.
Right. I write it. I ask them that all the time, and it doesn't make many friends. But
I don't know. Again, it's not rocket science, right? Yeah, we could easily adopt what other states have done. We do have obviously some differences. Our social equity aspects are a little different than others, and we have 15 license types for some reason.
15?
Yes, which is arguably too many, right?
You think?
Yeah. So our legislature reconvenes in February. And I know they're going to look at the number of license types. We have some ambiguities in the bill. It's not entirely clear who's going to qualify as a social equity applicant and how you can set up your business structure to avoid
Getting sued.
disqualifying yourself as a social equity activist. So we're working with the regulators and legislators to fine-tune some stuff, but I'm hopeful that we get some movement there. Naming the director, I think having somebody in place actually pushing it will really be important. But we're coming into the holidays. I don't think they're going to name anybody anytime soon.
I nominate Jason Tarasek.
No, thank you. It sounds like the hardest job on earth, to be honest. And to be honest, it doesn't really pay a lot.
Yeah.
So, relatively speaking, considering how complicated it is, and it just like what a political quagmire you have to walk through. So I do not envy that person, but if you're interested, send the governor your resume. He's looking.
Send it to gov@minnesota.gov. Jason, I appreciate your expertise, and you continue to be the most knowledgeable person of what's happening in Minnesota. That's why I'm hopeful that you're wrong on the timeline and that it's Q2 24.
Yeah, I'm hoping there's some under-promising, over-delivering, but I think that
has never been the case in cannabis, so...
Yeah, that might really be the timeline.
Yeah.
We're just going to have to be patient.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, you can buy your THC beverages at Total Wine.
Yeah.
So.
Or right around the corner.
That's true. Or literally right there.
Yeah.
Literally right there. Well, Jason, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for making time and sharing all things Minnesota, because it's like the third time Minnesota's come up, and you've only been here 10 minutes, but people are like super excited about it because it's a new market.
Should be. $1.5 billion market. We only have 2 medical marijuana companies, so there's not going to be a ton of established players there, so lots of opportunity.
So call Jason.
Give me a call.
1-800-VICENTE. No, that's not the phone number.
No.
But you can find Jason on LinkedIn. He's there. You can find him. Thank you for making time. He's also here if you happen to be watching and you're in Las Vegas.
I'll be hanging at the Cosmo today.
Cosmo
Trying to do some
Chandelier
work.
Bar.
Yep.
There you go. He's Jason Tarasek. We'll be right back with Robert from AR Wellness and Brian Barish from Dutchy. We're going to be talking about the U.S. Cannabis Council and all things happening in D.C., or I guess sometimes not happening in D.C. Jason, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.